It's telling me it's not getting enough data, but we'll see. We'll see. I think it's just telling me lies. I think it's just wants to make me sweat. Make them sweat. Make them be worse. All right, I'm going to look at this real fast. All right, I restarted the OBS. It says it's doing better. It says it's got excellent connection. We'll see. Maybe it was that. Maybe it wasn't. Okay, it says we're in excellent connection now. Okay, well, we'll fucking see. This is a one-man operation, so these kind of things are bound to happen now and again. These technical hiccups. Seems like we've had a lot of them, hasn't it? So, welcome. Welcome to episode 5 of Sunday Storytime with Romper. We are 2 weeks away from finishing this book. This wonderful, wonderful book. I've timed it out so that, next week will be the final week of MIB2, and the following week, we're going to be starting something especially special for Christmas. God, you know it. You know I love Christmas movies. You know I've got to love Christmas movie novelization adaptations. I mean, who fucking doesn't? That's just, these are the facts of life. You take the good, you take the bad. And there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. Well, last week we had quite the episode where we did quite a bit to go through this. We're already getting another error. Whatever. I'm just gonna power through it and hope that the audio at least comes through. That's the most important part. You know, seeing my beautiful face and my beautiful new hair is amazing, of course, but you know, the audio is really, really, really where it's at for you guys. That's the most important part. That's what you need in your life. Yeah, so last week after the stream was done, we decided to go with this pink hair. Been thinking about doing it for a while. Decided to wait till after Thanksgiving. You know, we hadn't seen Grandpa in a while, and he knows I'm a weirdo, so I don't think he would care. But you know, let's just not add to it unnecessarily. You know, that was my thought on the whole process. But I love it now. I think it's rocking. It's a sweet color. Kind of goes with the sweet Malay. Well, I think I've fucked around nearly enough. Let's thank the Lords for this. Dear Lords of movie novelizations, we thank thee for making movies and then having people novelize them for us. Put them in a format that we can enjoy with added features, added jokes, added just, it helps flesh out the story. I mean, did you not know this much about Men in Black 2? I mean, this is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know, dear Lords, we thank you. We thank you for just continuing to bless us with these wonderful books. You can see behind me, I have quite the stack of just absolutely wonderful, wonderful books. Thanks, Julie. It's the next evolution, right? Go to a completely different radical color. But yeah, here we are. We are on chapter 15. We're about like rounding the 2/3 point around here, and we are fucking ready to go. We are so ready for this week. I'm totally ready. You can tell by how much stalling I'm doing. No, jokes. All right, last week we were being about ready for this thing to go down, but yeah, they found a business card for Tapeworm Video, and we're about to go there. We are about to be introduced to 2 more characters, just for this short little segment, but they have interesting voices as well. Don't worry about that. All right. Without further ado, Men in Black 2, Part 5, Chapter 15. Most video rental outlets in New York City fall into one of 2 general categories, large and small. The larger ones are usually the big brand name franchise outlets. Seen one, seen them all. They offer multiple copies of the newest, hottest releases and a wide selection of popular comedies, action/adventure flicks, sci-fi epics, family fare, dramas, cartoons, and you know who, the purple dinosaur tapes for the kiddies, and so on. The clerks wear uniforms, smile included. It's a nice place to take the children. The adult section, if it's there at all, is kept discreetly out of the way in the back. Blah, blah, blah. The smaller video rental spots are more on the lines of the mom and pop store, found tucked away into parts of the city that have more of a neighborhood feel. Each is unique, many bearing cutesy, clever, or irritating names. In these places, you have to move fast if you want to snag one of those precious few copies of the hottest new releases before they become tepid oldies. Or see if you can get your name on the pre-release waiting list, or set up a friendly arrangement with one of the clerks who, by the way, don't wear uniforms and only smile if they feel like it. Here you can still rent comedies, action-adventure flicks, sci-fi epics, etc., but your additional viewing options will be more eclectic. The offerings weighted between the proprietor's whims of taste and his rueful knowledge that a store that doesn't stock Barney videos might as well declare Chapter 11 from the get-go. There are more foreign films and even anime for the neighborhood Japanophile, or the viewer who feels one can never have enough big-eyed, small-mouthed, large-breasted, half-naked teenage schoolgirls with superpowers, and the tentacled monsters are cool. The adult section, and there most definitely is one here, make no mistake about it, is almost always kept out of sight in the curtained-off back room. Places that offer the viewer nothing but adult fare don't figure into this equation, since they don't allow their rental tapes to be taken off the premises. So that's what's there is to choose from in the New York video outlet size large and video outlet size small. That's it. That's all she wrote. Pick one of the 2 options. No waiting. Simple, yeah? And then there's Tapeworm. Tapeworm Video was open late. Tapeworm Video was always open late. As soon as Jay stepped over the threshold, he was seized by the inescapable feeling that it wasn't open any other time but late. Because the regular customers feared the great yellow orb that blinds and burns, that ubiquitous eyes of the government. Instead of the expected sections found in other video stores, Tapeworm offers its clients their films sorted into very specific categories, their names prominently displayed above the racks holding the cassettes. Sci-Fact and Oliver Stone Films. The Occult and Oliver Stone Films. The Bizarre and Oliver Stone Films. Conspiracy and Oliver Stone Films. Jay didn't want to say anything, but he believed he could detect something like a pattern here. When he and Kay first entered the creepy little store, a number of patrons were browsing these racks. Most of them wore hooded sweatshirts and trench coats with the collars pulled up. All of them were behaving in a furtive manner that positively begged, "Look at me! Look at me!" As soon as they scented outlanders in their midst, they pulled their heads deeper into those same hoods and collars and averted their eyes. That was just fine with Jay. Just because he saw bizarre, sometimes hideous aliens on a daily basis didn't mean he was a man without limits, capable of seeing any damn freaky thing and still holding onto his sanity and his lunch. He suspected that if he were to get a good look at some of these people, he'd know what made Marilyn Manson wake up screaming. He was also more than a little afraid that these were people with theories. Somehow, in the course of their upbringing, their parents and or guardians had neglected to teach them the niceties of social interaction. As a result, they'd been ostracized by the pleasant give-and-take childhood, unless it involved some bully giving them regular beatings and them lying there and taking it. Such a life leaves a person prone to bookishness, and if not carefully monitored and controlled, bookishness leads, oh the horror, to independent thought, and lots of time to engage in it. Unfortunately, too much time and too much independent thought leads a person to contract mad scientist syndrome, a condition documented in Scientific American, or Reader's Digest, or Cosmopolitan. Jay couldn't remember which. The chief symptom is the tendency for the afflicted to mutter to himself, "Only I know the truth. Someday, when it's too late, they will learn. When the aliens invade Earth in their neutronium-powered warships, only I will be able to communicate with them. And then maybe I can actually get a date for Saturday night." But it wasn't enough for sufferers of MSS to gloat privately over the eventual vindication. No, they had formed certain theories, mostly involving cover-ups and conspiracies of assorted stripes. For all of their furtiveness and suspicion, they couldn't keep these theories to themselves, not even if you begged them to do so. At the least sign of interest, real or imagined, they would launch into a lengthy lecture of their favorite theory. People have been known to chew off their own limbs gladly in an attempt to escape such conversations. It's not a very pretty syndrome. Just thinking about it gave Jay the shivers. He avoided eye contact and stuck close to Kay. The checkout counter was manned by a cute kid in her 20s, liberally pierced and tattooed. She would have been a whole lot cuter if her thick, dark hair had more than a passing acquaintance with a brush and comb, or if her complexion was a shade less waxy, or if some kindly soul had told her to put the last time anyone had successfully pulled off that much eyeliner was something during the reign of Cleopatra. Anyone who wasn't a raccoon by birth, that is. That was just fucking mean. That was just fucking mean for no fucking reason. Jay, you are a mean boy. She was staring vacantly at the computer screen, which, for all Jay knew, was equally vacant. When Kay handed her his card, coming back to life, she called up his account record. "This card hasn't been used in a really long time," the girl said, as if accusing Kay of some crime against humankind or the Western civilization. "Before I was born." "Been traveling on business," Kay replied. "Millions of frequent flyer miles," Jay put in. "Try and use them," the girl sniffed derisively. "I always wanted to go to Cambodia. You can get a lobster dinner there for like $1. And then the airlines told me they black out holidays. You have to stay over a weekend. It's a conspiracy." "Can you tell us anything about the account?" Jay broke in preemptively. "Only that you can never check out a tape," the girl told Kay, handing him back his card. Kay's mouth turned down a fraction of an inch at the corners. Dead end, dead planet. Jay felt his gut tighten. The clock was running. The seconds were blinking away. If they were going to save the Earth, they'd have to hustle up a new lead, and fast. But where? Certainly not here. Don't beat a dead horse. He and Kay started to leave. The girl's voice brought them back up short. "You reserved one once, but she never picked it up." She turned her head and hollered into the back. "Newton!" Newton emerged from the cloaked and mysterious regions of the tapeworm's innards, a 30-something man who wore weirdness as a badge of honor. Stereotypes are unfair, to be sure, but stereotypes don't just leap into existence spontaneously. They have to come from somewhere. Newton was the one true source and template for geek/dork/nerd stereotypes everywhere. He was balding, beady-eyed, behind his thick, black-rimmed glasses, and he was dressed in a style that screamed to the heavens, "I'm not only still live with my mother, I let her pick out all my clothes." When he caught sight of Jay and Kay standing there in their snappy suits, their We're from the government, and we're here to help you posture. He went on guard faster than a Doberman sending a burglar's backside.
Still think I'm paranoid, Haley?
He demanded of the clerk. Yeah, Haley replied, like QED. Warily, he turned his attention to the too well-groomed for comfort visitors.
I'm Newton,
he said.
I run the place.
He leaned across the counter and in a low, confidential voice said,
Seen any aliens lately?
You need professional help, son, Kay told him.
He's getting it,
Haley volunteered.
It's not working.
You don't remember me?
You don't remember me?
Newton went on.
1997? The morgue? I was the guy slimed on the ceiling?
To blank stares, Newton continued.
The tape you reserved.
He consulted the display that Haley had called up on the computer. When he looked up, it was as if he was seeing something through different eyes.
Episode 27 of the one about the light of Zartha, right? I got it upstairs.
It was Jay and Kay's turn to go on point. Keep talking, Jay said. Back in Zed's office, deep within the headquarters of the subjugated men in black, Serlina was just wrapping up an unsatisfying employee work performance review session. She hadn't read any of the myriad self-help books on the market of upper management, and she didn't quite grasp the point of Dilbert. But lacking outside guidance, she had nonetheless managed to formulate a few of her own rules for highly effective neural root creatures. Now she stood by Zed's desk, looking down to her two-headed henchman, Scrad/Charlie. While an unconscious Zed lay slumped nearby, Scrad/Charlie had returned and made a report, detailing the events that had taken place in the basement of Jeeb's pawnshop earlier that night. He had done his best to cast the whole thing in an optimistic light, but his skills as a spin doctor weren't up to the task. Charlie's head was averted, perhaps out of shame for having fallen so heinously short of his lovely commander's expectation, so it remained Scrad's lot to say.
Thank you for taking mercy, Selina.
You really are proof that two heads aren't better than one, she said with equal parts malice and scorn. Good one, good one. No one could kiss butt like Scrad, especially when his own was on the line.
We'll find Kay again, he promised.
You have less than an hour. Go. Scrad nodded and turned to obey. Behind him, Charlie finally lifted his head, revealing the true reason for his display of demureness. His face had been beaten to a bloody pulp. It would be unfair to speak of the damage Serlina had inflicted in comparison to a plate of raw hamburger. Raw hamburger was still potentially appetizing. Charlie's face was not.
That was not bad, Scrad whispered back at his battered half. Wasn't pretty behind you, Charlie mumbled through broken teeth and swollen lips. Never is.
Having dealt with the hired help, Serlina tried a different route to get what she wanted. She picked up the unconscious Zed by the throat, held him over her head, and shook him like a dusting rag. Zed! She shouted, demanding his attention. He gasped, shuddered, and choked, but he came to his senses. She lowered him and brought him closer. Look at you, she purred. 25 years, still so handsome. Cut out meat and dairy, he replied. And look at you, still a pile of squirmy crap in a different wrapper. So feisty. The insult didn't even touch her. Water off a duck's back. She sounded amused. Said, we both need the same thing. She tossed him into his chair hard and handed him his communicator. Bring him in. Don't think so, said Zed. Excuse me. Still keeping her tone amiable. Serlina said, You'll do what I tell you, or have you forgotten the little secret of the light? The inside story at MIB was that Kay had learned his facial expressions from Zed, who was the one true master of emotional control, so when a flicker of concern crossed Zed's face, it was clear that he didn't remember the little secret of the light, and that it was the experts called a doozy. The failsafe device, he said. The failsafe device, he said, his throat abruptly dry. If it isn't back on Zartha when it's supposed to be, Earth goes pfft. Oh. Let me try that again. The failsafe device, he said,
his throat abruptly dry. If it isn't back on Zartha when it's supposed to be, Earth goes pfft, Serlina said. She was still smiling, her most persuasive smile. I lose, you lose, I win. Everything keeps spinning. Zed maintained his stoic front for just an instant longer and let it crumble. He looked like a man whose last hope of deliverance had run out. All right, Serlina, he said. You win. He punched up a series of numbers on his communicator and handed it to her. She was grinning in triumph as she heard the telltale singing, the sound of the call going through, and then, The Waverly Cinema is proud to present the 1000th showing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. She was just starting to lose that grin when Zed reached back, grabbed the lamp off his desk, and whacked her upside the head. Jumping up, he delivered a series of lethal-looking roundhouse kicks to Selina's head as a follow-up to a blow from the lamp. As he hit the ground, he reflected that it really did help to cut out the meat and dairy. Unfortunately, Selina had been following the same diet. Zed's 1-2 blows, capable of decking a platoon of teamsters, didn't even knock her off balance. She crossed to where he stood. She was no longer smiling. So very feisty, she said before kicking him in the head. It only took her one try. Leaving Zed lying there, out cold, she shifted her gaze out to the main hall of MIB headquarters. Spread out below her, she could rest easy. All the things that she had left them for when she first took over. Or were they? Her brows came together. Her eyes focused on the body of the dead alien. It wasn't acting dead enough. Something inside it was moving. The crease between Serlina's eyebrows deepened. It was dead, and it was moving, and it wasn't supposed to be doing that. First, she would know the reason why. Then she would stop it. As Zed would testify, if he weren't unconscious, Serlina was very good at stopping things. That's a dumb joke to end on. What a dumb chapter end joke. You lose. I'll sip some tea before we go to 16. You know, they can't all be zingers. They usually end on a decent joke, but Selina was very good at stopping. That's fucking stupid. Chapter 16. Newton lived in the apartment above Tapeworm Video. His bedroom was a chaotic jumble of UFO clippings, fake alien artifacts, model spaceships, sign that advised, trust no one, and a painfully neat display of perfectly organized, meticulously labeled, filed, and cross-referenced videotapes. As soon as he had led Jay, Kay, and Haley safely within the restricted area, he shut the door and swiftly engaged several locks. Newton, is that you? Came an older woman's voice from somewhere in the apartment. Yes, Mom, he called back. I'm up here with some friends. I want to have your baby, Haley screamed, loud enough for Mom to hear. Jay could tell how much he enjoyed obeying her inner anarchist by how wide she grinned and how high Newton jumped when she did that. Unflapped and unflappable, Mom's voice replied, Would you like some mini pizzas? Plainly she knew her little boy, and she was more than confident that her son would never indulge in premarital sex. Not while he was living under her roof and her rules. Newton was a good boy. Newton looked inquiringly at J.K. and a clearly disappointed Haley. Mini pizzas? He repeated the offer, trying to be friendly, the way he'd see the mundanes do it on TV. They just stared at him with an, and they call me antisocial shrug. He yelled back, Thanks, we're cool. And then to his guests, Over here. They followed him through the limited landscape of his bedroom, past tabloid tales of alien autopsies and many shrines to Roswell and all its secrets, to where the tapes waited in the obsessively organized row. There it is. There it is, Newton said, immediately homing in on one of among hundreds and handing it to Jay. It was labeled Mysteries in History, The Light of Zartha, and the subheading, narrated by Peter Graves. At last, Jay said, some hard evidence. It was tough to tell whether or not he was kidding. Play it, Kay said, and somewhere the ghost of Humphrey Bogart smiled. Immediately, Newton gave them the run of the VCR. He was more than willing to do so. It was as if, for the first time in his life, he was feeling that he was actually accomplishing something. And these weren't the usual sort of guests. These guys in the matching black suits, they weren't at all like the regulars who came in a tape porn video. They looked normal. Street normal. Newton knew how street normal people generally viewed people like him. Street normal people thought it was crazy to believe that there was more to the universe than Oliver Stone movies. While he thought they were arrogant to believe that, as far as life in the cosmos went, they were it. Whether you were a creationist or you bet all your chips on the Big Bang, Newton believed in his heart of hearts that creation cried out for variety. For the love of Pete, didn't these people think things through? How could you be the only one world populated by sentient, self-aware creatures when the universe offered 4 kinds of Coca-Cola? For the moment, though, he got the grip on the emotions. There's way more than 4 kinds of Coca-Cola. Side note, this is bullshit. He's lying. There is way more than 4 kinds of Coca-Cola. I went to the world of Coca-Cola in Atlanta, Georgia, and I tried probably like 50 gazillion types of Coca-Cola. So, for the moment, though, he got a grip on his emotions and rolled the tape. It was the sort of video that brought to mind such cinematic greats as Ed Wood, and that weird kid who used to live down the block who once got his hands on Dad's video camera and convinced his pals to dye their skin green with food coloring so they could play Martians. There's one of those in every neighborhood. Aluminum foil wrapped around a water pistol makes a nifty ray gun. When your production values are on par with Plan 9 from outer space, and your budget is the price of a pack of construction paper, a busted down cardboard box, and a carton full of Lego building blocks, your audience is assured to receive a quality viewing experience. The first shot was of an office. There was a standard to these quasi-scientific documentaries. The furniture was cheesy. Everything had the air of being borrowed from people who had day jobs. There were shelves and shelves of important-looking books in the background to bestow the illusion that corroborative research had been done. It would have helped the video's credibility if most of the spines hadn't looked like painted pasteboard dummies. Peter Graves walked solemnly onto the set and sat on the edge of the desk. It had been years since Mission Impossible, but he still had that dramatic abundance of silver hair, those intense blue eyes, and the ability to speak with convention, persuasiveness, and sincerity. It was a mercy that he hadn't decided to go into politics. "Although no one has ever been able to prove their existence," he began, romancing the camera lens. "A quasi-government agency known as the Men in Black supposedly carries out secret operations here on Earth in order to keep us safe from aliens throughout the galaxies. Here is one of their stories that never happened, from one of their files that doesn't exist." Jay watched, marveling at the beauty of it all. It was Edgar Allan Poe's gambit from the purloined letter. There's no better place to hide than in plain sight. Make a videotape that reveals the truth about the Men in Black, and make it look like the lowest of low-budget sci-fi featurettes, and no one will ever believe it, except for the eccentrics, cranks, nutcases, and woo-woos. The television screen filled with a star field and looked like a black cloth dotted with glow-in-the-dark paint. Peter Graves continues his narration. 1978. The devastating War of Zartha had raged on for 50 years. The Zarthan people, good and pure, their enemies, Kylothian invaders. Books are written about these moments in cinematic history when the creative spirit was willing but the budget was weak. In the great American tradition of making do with what you've got, and when you can't exactly what you want, duct tape in mass quantities is always involved, and you can usually see where it's being used. At best, this results in such moments as when a Roman centurion raises his hand to salute, and you can see his Timex wristwatch plain as day. The battle scenes from the War of Zartha documentary were a combination of the Holy Grail, Paradise Found, and the Big Rock Candy Mountain for self-righteous blooper gleaners everywhere. Yes, they were that bad. Compared to what Agents J and K saw on Newton's TV screen, Ed Wood was in the same class as Steven Spielberg. The manner in which the producers of this visual atrocity had chosen to portray a flying saucer attack was sparkler on a frisbee, Jay remarked. Scary. He sat down next to Kay as Peter Graves droned on. But the Zarthans had a great treasure, the light of Zartha. A source of power so awesome, it alone could mean victory and restoration for the Zarthans, or complete annihilation if it fell into the hands of the Kylothians. A decision was made to hide it on an insignificant blue planet, third from the sun. A group of Zarthans made the journey, led by the Keeper of Light. Lorana, Kay said quietly, an instant before Peter Graves said, Princess Lorana. Jay and Newton both turned to stare at Kay, who was now totally transfixed by the story unfolding on the little glass screen. The soothing, sincere voice of the narrator continued. Lorana beseeched the men in black to help her hide the light on Earth, but they could not intervene. The video showed a gaggle of actors badly costumed as men in black, Zarthans and Kylothians, standing in one of these nondescript, generic cornfields that are a staple of sci-fi horror and action-adventure flicks. When in doubt, rendezvous somewhere in the middle of a grain belt in broad daylight. You never know what's lurking in your cereal, even when it's just going out of the fields. It could be a secret decoder ring. It could be a bunch of secret government agents and the alien they deal with on a daily basis. Only difference is that the secret decoder ring's going to have some resale value on eBay someday. Kay gazed at the sun-drenched scene on the glass screen. No, he said distinctly at the television set. Nat. Something flashed inside his head. He was there again. There in the heart of his restored memories. It was all so vivid, painfully so. It was nighttime, and he was standing in the middle of the cornfield, somewhere in the Midwest. The stalked towers over his head, tall enough to completely hide from prying eyes, the MIB van and the golden teardrop-shaped spaceship in the clearing. A grain silo loomed in dim relief nearby. The other agents accompanying him were no longer bit players in cheap third-grade polyester suits, but the real deal, slick, sharp professional. The Zarthans and Kylothians were just as genuine as Kay's returned memories could conjure them. The Kylothians, all hideous tangles of neural roots, mercifully swathed in long hooded robes. The Zarthans, far closer to humanoid, and Princess Lorana. She was beautiful. The word at once said too little and more than enough. Her face, framed in the bell of her midnight blue hood, held an exotic loveliness that could not be attributed to any one feature. Luminous eyes, full lips, gleaming raven hair, but was instead the breathtaking effect of all her aspects taken together. Another flash filled Kay's mind. This time it was lightning, the image of the same bolts that had seared the skies over the cornfield 25 years ago. It was raining as Kay and the other agents gathered to deal with the latest threat to the security of planet Earth. From somewhere an infinity away, in Newton's bedroom, Kay heard himself say, raining, as he sank ever deeper into his memories. The rain came down hard. He could almost feel it. In his hair, on his face, trickling down the back of his collar. Even after 25 years, he was young and strong and new to the men in black, but ready to do whatever was necessary. Whatever was necessary. A hooded figure detached itself from the ranks of the Kylothians and approached him. Deep within the bell of the hood, a tangle of neural roots spoke with a deep voice, reminiscent of Serlena's, saying, "You've been very wise." Its tone smacked horribly of satisfaction and triumph. "Kay, please, I beg you." Another female voice filled his memory with the force of a bullet through his heart. It was Princess Lorana, and the raindrops of that lost night were running down her lovely face like tears. "If they have light, it is the end of our civilization." The young Kay turned to her, his expression the same adamantine mask that had become his trademark within the agency. Agent K, know the rules, stick to the regulations. Everything by the book. Always.
Ambassador Lorana, he said, if we expand protection beyond Earth, we would jeopardize Earth itself. We have no choice. We must remain neutral.
Where is it? The hooded neural root creature demanded, greed, eagerness, and a thirst for blood dripping from every word. Kay addressed the creature in precisely the same businesslike tone he'd used with Lorana.
You didn't think we're going to give it to you, he said. We're neutral. You want it. The silo in the distance split open like a milkweed pod, and the spaceship erupted from a blaze of fiery exhaust, rocketing toward the vast and trackless darkness of interstellar space. Go find it.
No! The creature's cry of rage and frustration almost drowned out the thunderous roar of the fast-escaping ship. She raced to her own spaceship, but before she slammed the entry port and took off in pursuit of the vanishing prize, she stopped and turned in the doorway. A weapon glittered in her grasp. It was ridiculous in appearance, a snarl of shiny golden tubes that sprouted into a bouquet of brassy trumpet-like cups, a thing straight out of John Philip Sousa's worst nightmares. But this abomination didn't make music, it dealt death. The creature fired the weapon with lethal accuracy, just as Kay cried out in anguish. Lorana! Too late. The warning came too late, and the Kylothian shot was too sudden, too accurate to avoid. Lorana fell, dying, even as the other Men in Black agents fired futilely at the fleeing spaceship. The rain fell, soaking Kay as he knelt in the cornfield, cradling Lorana in his arms. He never felt it. His face was wet with more than raindrops. Perched on the bed in Newton's room, images long effaced by self-neuralization overwhelmed him, and the pain they brought in their train was all the worse for having suppressed for so many years. He wanted to look away. He knew he could not. There was nowhere to hide from memories. The younger Kay knelt in a Midwest cornfield, Lorana's body in his lap, and looked down at his hand, clutched into a fist. Slowly the fingers uncurled. A bracelet lay in the hollow of his palm as the rain continued to fall. A bracelet he remembered seeing somewhere before he had forced himself to call back all his pain. The memory ended. Kay was fully back in Newton's bedroom, memories and all, gazing at the television screen while Peter Gray's voice concluded. Never knowing it happened, the people of Earth were once again saved by the secret society of protectors known as the Men. Kay stopped the tape. I shouldn't have, he began. You didn't send it off the planet, Jay said, realizing the full significance of what he'd just seen. You hid it here. That was your plan with Lorana. I went off book, Kay said. For him, it was the worst offense an agent of the MIB could commit. The worst sort of self-condemnation. But he didn't have the chance for further reclamation. There was too much to be done, and as far as the time to do it. The pulsar's bright red display was blinking, irrefutable reminder that time was running out. Huddled together, holding hands and sniffling loudly, Haley and Newton were indifferent to the sense of urgency. And suddenly gripped their guest. So sad. So sad. So sad, Newton sniffled. So beautiful, Haley concurred, crying softly. The bracelet, Kay said to Jay, who didn't need to wait for the penny to drop either. Worm guys. He ran out of Newton's bedroom, leaving his partner to tidy up loose ends. Jay slipped on his Ray-Bans and held his neuralizer in front of the weeping couple. They had clearly been made for each other, even if its cynics everywhere were chiming with, yeah, out of spare parts. Maybe it was because he allowed his own sense of loneliness to take the helm. Maybe it was just because he'd opted to listen into his inner Yenta. But Jay decided that the perfect post-neurolytic suggestion this unlikely pair would be. He remembered what Haley had said downstairs in the video store about her heart's dearest wish. The neuralizer flashed, and he said, "Take her out for a lobster dinner." It wasn't much of a start, but it was a hell of a lot more doable than taking her to Cambodia. Besides, when a guy like Newton got his foot in the door of a relationship, sometimes the rest of him followed. It was what scientists call gravity, or inertia, or survival of the geekiest, or something. Jay wondered whether
Cupid ever had second thoughts about setting up matches that seemed like a good idea at the time, then dashed out after Kay. I'm a little bit mixed up today. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. That's all right. It happens. I mean, it happens on a live stream. You know, you can't expect me to be like, sit here and read for 2.5 hours for you. It's a good book, but you know, my mouth gets a little bit tired. My brain gets a little bit off. All right. Chapter 17. Almost as soon as he and Kay leapt into the Mercedes, Jay was on the line, using the car communicator to call Laura. She was still in the worm guy's apartment when the call came through over the communicator Jay had left in her care. "Hello?" she said, answering the device's insistent summons. "Laura, it's me." Jay's voice came in loud, clear, and urgent. "Jay." Laura sounded genuinely pleased to hear from him. If she picked up on the dead serious tone in his voice, she didn't let on it. "We're playing Twister." They certainly were. The worms were an impossible tangle of lithe little bodies, with Laura's own body knotted right in the middle of the squirming, contorted mass. The worm guys were not complaining. It was the closest they'd gotten to anything female since the escort services in town had put them into their too weird even for us lists. "Hi, Jay." "Jay! Quit touching my butt. Quit touching my butt." "Sorry, I thought it was your face." Laura was taking the whole thing in, including her snarl beyond belief position, with a huge dollop of good sportsmanship and humor. "They're really good at this," she told Jay. "Laura," he said, "are you wearing a charm bracelet?" Yeah." Laura was somewhat taken aback by this unexpected inquiry. With some difficulty, she managed to get the appropriate wrist free of the worm guy bundle and looked at the bracelet in question. It was the same twinkling object the beautiful Princess Lorana had pressed into Agent K's hand with her dying breath. Ben gave it to me," she said. "I've had it since I was—" Something about it caught her eye. Something new and different and disquieting. The charm, shaped like a little pyramid, was... "Is it glowing?" Kay cut in brusquely. It wasn't exactly a question, more like an expectation of something inevitable. "It's glowing," Laura's confirming voice filled the Mercedes. "It's never done that before." "Don't let the bracelet out of your sight," Jay ordered. "Jay, what's—" He didn't have time to answer. He felt as though he didn't have time for anything but racing to her side, protecting her, setting her mind at ease, making everything all right for her, for both of them. "We're on our way." He cut off communication as the Mercedes took off at top speed in a squeal and screeched of peeling rubber. Another click, and he opened the channel to Frank. "Frank, we found the light." Jay's voice came through a little Pug's communicator back at MIB headquarters, with a distinctness that would turn cell and digital phone system execs bright with green with envy. "We're on our way to the worm guy's apartment. See if you can get the sub-control panel and deactivate the lockdown." There was a click, and Jay's voice cut out before Frank could acknowledge the call. But Frank wasn't in a position to acknowledge anything. He was bound and gagged into a neat little bundle of pissed-off Pug. While his communicator rested in Serlena's hands, she gazed at it for a moment, digesting the precious information that Jay's reckless message had dumped right into her lap like the biggest and best birthday present ever. Then, "Scrad!" While Serlena's strident command rang through the halls of MIB headquarters, Kay and Jay tore through the darkened streets of New York City. "Why didn't you say I love you?" Kay asked his partner. "I don't even like Frank," Jay replied. He was dodging the question, and he knew it. He was too smart to honestly believe he was fooling Kay for an instant. He wasn't. "Laura," Kay said, "you're sweet on her, and as long as you're MIB, that's a mistake." "You're tripping." Jay did his best to hold on to the illusion that he was deceiving Kay, that he would put him from the truth. "It's why you didn't neuralize her," Kay persisted. "You got soft." "Like you?" Jay shot back.
Maybe the best defense was a good offense. Did you like you did with Lorana? Kay didn't deny it. He was one of those types who believed the pop psych golden rule, that any offense you ever committed was A-OK and not your fault at all, as long as you found the means to shift the blame to someone else. He took full responsibility for what he'd done all those years ago. I put our entire planet in danger by going off book. He gave Jay a hard look. Don't go soft on me, kid. It took what felt like a million years from the drive from Tapeworm Video to the Worm Guy's apartment. Kay's old pulsar displayed beyond any argument that time was still ticking away at a normal rate, but for Jay, it felt as though the blinking seconds were stretching behind him, out like strands of liquid rubber. He wished that in all of the alien technology the MIB had received, there was some device that would let him transport himself from place to place in the blink of an eye. Actually, there was, but the extraterrestrials who owned the patent had refused to give it to Earthlings after some idiot at headquarters had allowed them to watch both the movie versions of The Fly. The Cronenberg one put off their lunch for 15 years, and the offer of the global translocator was decisively withdrawn. It was a physical relief that Jay finally reached the Worm Guy's apartment door and knocked. No answer. The little dudes were probably too tangled up in their game of Twister to let Jay and Kay in. But if that were the case, why hadn't they yelled something like, "Come in," or "Wait a minute," or... Jay's sense of relief vanished like a drop of water on a hot griddle. He leaned back and kicked the door in. What lay behind it confirmed his every fear. The Worm Guy's apartment had been transformed from a swinging bachelor pad into the aftermath of a war zone. Everywhere Jay looked, he saw destruction and smoldering ruin. The echoes of the noise he'd made when kicking down the apartment door were the only sound these demolished rooms, a sound that faded fast. The silence that all implied fell with a great weight across his shoulders. I've got to go to the bathroom. Holy crap, I am sorry. Deader, just a little bit deader. Deader, just a tiny bit of deader. Just a tiny bit of deader. And we're back. All right. Laura, he called out into the devastation. Over here. The only answer he derived was from over here. The only answer he received was from Kay, summoning him to what he'd discovered. Jay moved quickly and saw a horrible sight. The floor of the apartments was littered into the bodies of the Worm Guys. They had been cut to pieces, each one brutally slashed in two by creatures whose vocabulary had no word for overkill. It was a good thing they'd installed linoleum flooring. It was tough enough to get ordinary spills out of carpet, let alone assorted bodily oozes. Nebel, Jay exclaimed, gazing down at the bisected body of one of Serlena's victims. They might be worms to the rest of the world, but to him they were comrades, co-workers, and friends. Even if he did have a lockup. Even if he did have to lock up the good silver when they came over for dinner. A moan rose up from one of the slashed bodies. The worm named Nebel opened his eyes and looked around groggily. One of the first things he saw was the other half of his mutilated body. It couldn't possibly have been a comforting sight. Jay stood ready to offer what comfort he could, to ease what Nebel's last moments. "Oh boy," said Nebel. He sounded less mortally wounded and than miffed. At the sound of his voice, a pair of eyes sprang open at one end of his severed lower body. Nebel stared at his other half as it became its own person. "Nebel?" he inquired tentatively. "Nebel?" The now fully independent entity responded. The same thing was happening all over the wrecked apartment. One by one, the half-bodies regenerated everything they needed to complete themselves. Mannix? One ventured. Yeah, I'm Mannix, came the reassuring reply from what had once been Upper Mannix's lower torso. My brother, Upper Mannix exclaimed happily, raising half a hand. Give me a 2.5. Lower Mannix gleefully complied, slapping spindly palms with his former upper self. Inwardly, Jay was just as glad as the next worm to see his coffee-swilling office supply filching buddies alive and well, and then some. But any celebration would have to wait. Where did they take Laura? He demanded of the restored worm guys. MIB, Needle provided willingly enough. Some dumb two-headed guy. He was in a real hurry, said one of the two worms that now answered to the name Sleeble. But he stopped for a few minutes to catch the end of Everybody Loves Raymond. They're using an impounded chip at MIB to go back home, Geeble chimed in. But they have the bracelet, Jay began. He felt a passing pang of helplessness and did his best not to let it show. We have 39 minutes to get the light off this planet or we go nuclear, Kay said, snapping him back into crisis mode. Want to chat about it? Chat? No. Get ready to rumble? Yes. Before they could take back MIB and save the light of Zartha from Serlina and her crew, Jay and Kay both knew that they'd have to get their hands on the right tools for the job. Time to go shopping. I need a little sip. Sippy sip. A little sippy sip of some tea. Delicioso. This is wonderful. The history of the Men in Black was borne witness to some frightening things, but nothing could properly prepare Agents K and J for what they found when they opened the door to Kay's old apartment. Martha. Of all the sentient life forms in all the planetary systems, in all the galaxies in the universe, why did it have to be Martha? Jay took a deep breath as he and Kay walked through the door. In his time with the Men in Black, he made diligent inquiries concerning Martha and her minions, but had been unable to discover any link between that woman and any insidious intergalactic conspiracy, despite the fact that she possessed an uncanny ability to make every woman on Earth feel somehow inferior, largely because they didn't have room in their lives for accomplishing proper decoupage. All that he'd managed to turn up was a frightening revelation that there was a cell of Martha fans at MIB, and not all of them were women. Clearly, the woman seated on the sofa in Kay's former digs had fallen under her influence. The man, the husband no doubt, wore the glazed expression of someone who was just along for the ride. A little girl shared couch space with them, probably for no reason other than she'd been told that it was either watch this show or go to bed. Oh, the ordeals children were willing to suffer through just so they could stay up late. So she sat there, equally expressionless, but no doubt plotting all manner of payback scenarios that she was sure to initiate the moment she became a teenager. The three of them had all fallen into such a deep state of TV-induced hypnosis that they hardly noticed when the front door swung open, though they did look up from Martha's demo of Take No Prisoners sponge painting as Kay, Jay, and the worm stepped into their department. Don't worry about a thing, folks, Kay said. I used to live here. Come back, pick a few things. It might have been the element of surprise, the outright shock of this home invasion, or the fact that Martha had, indeed, broken their proud spirits. But the happy family didn't utter so much as a peep as they watched Kay cross their living room to the thermostat on the wall above their television set. He spun the dial with the sureness of a professional safecracker. In response to his actions, the entire wall behind the couch flipped open, revealing a cavernous room crammed to the gunwales with a lovely assortment of lethal-looking MIB weapons. Under the stunned, silent gaze of the family, Kay and Jay raided the stockpile, selecting their weapons of choice, then tossing fission carbonizers and neural destabilizers to the eager worm guys. The little Brigglers were ecstatic and to have been entrusted with the heavy artillery. Lock and load, baby, they crowed. It was a mercy that they didn't lapse into bad Arnold Schwarzenegger accents or threaten to go medieval on someone's hindquarters. As Kay returned to the thermostat and dialed the proper combination to lower the walls into its original position,
Jay slipped on his Ray-Bans and confronted the catatonic family, still frozen in place on the couch. As the afterdazzle of the neuralizer flash cleared away, Kay stepped in to provide the mental replacement data necessary for the planetary security and civilian peace of mind. "You do not see a room full of shiny weapons," he recited. "You do not see 4 alien night crawlers. You will love and cherish each other for the rest of your lives. Duty done." Duty done, he headed for the door, leaving Jay to add, "which could be the next 27 or 28 minutes, so y'all should get to the loving and the cherishing." He was backing out of the door after Kay and the worm guys when his glance fell on the little girl. A mischievous afterthought tapped him on the shoulder, and he said, "Oh yeah, and she can stay up as late as she wants and have cookies and candies and cakes and junk and stuff." Maybe the world would end that night. Maybe it wouldn't. But somehow Agent J felt a vague sense of comfort in knowing that he'd done something to repay the child for what he'd done after what she'd been forced to endure. Martha. Some parents. Damn. And on that happy note, he left. He does not like Martha Stewart. That's who the Martha was, if you didn't get that. What a dumb thing. Chapter 18. There wasn't a lot of traffic en route from Kay's old apartment to MIB headquarters, and there weren't any passerbys in that part of Manhattan at that hour of the night. It was all good, saving a whole lot of wear and tear on the old neuralizer. Jay and Kay ditched the Mercedes and went racing up the monolithic entrance to headquarters, locking their weapons into place as they ran. Kay looked over his shoulder. "You guys ready?" he demanded. Behind him, the worm guys were busy strapping on bandoliers and knives, their rubbery faces already streaked with camouflage makeup. Somewhere on the other coast, Sylvester Stallone had a lot to answer for. "Looking for a few good worms," Nebel said grimly. "Hooah!" Gleeble affirmed, and his competitive, straight-from-the-gut cry was taken up by his brother. "Hooah!" Whatever the hell it meant, but it sure sounded cool. "You ready, kid?" Kay asked Jay. "Kid," Jay repeated resentfully. "You know, while you were off delivering packages and getting chased by poodles, I saved the world from the Krelon invasion." Kay wasn't impressed. "Krelons," he said. He even had the nerve to sound as if he were repressing a snicker. "The Backstreet Boys of space. What'd they do? Throw snowballs at you?" Jay decided that, in view of impending full planetary destruction, he would table all further arguments with Kay about his status within the agency. He remembered the words of the wise old sage who had once said, "Never get into a pissing contest when Earth is about to be vaporized by extraterrestrial forces beyond your immediate control." Maybe it was Socrates. Whoever, it was time for less talk and more action. "Age before beauty," he told Kay as he raised his bazooka and took aim in the front door. There was more than one way to end a lockdown. "Wait!" Kay cried, but it was too late. Jay fired, and the door was blown away. "For what?" Jay asked. "Depressurization!" Kay's reply was swallowed by the whole whoosh of the air being sucked into MIB headquarters, along with Kay and Jay, the worm guys, leaves, papers, and an entire Sabre hot dog cart off the street. The whole ungodly mess landed right in the front of the security guard, still at his post, under one of the two huge fans in the entryway. He continued to read his newspaper as if nothing much had happened. When he turned the page, the chains holding him to his chair clinked softly. It was a good thing to be prepared. Yes, it was. Just because some thoughtless young whippersnapper goes busting open the lockdown on the place, depressurizing everything all willy-nilly like that, hot dog carts flying in on a body uninvited, wasn't any reason for him to get sucked out of his comfortable old chair. "Depressurization," Jay repeated. "Code 101 lockdown," Kay explained. "Nothing comes in, nothing comes out. You sleep during orientation?" The security guard turned to another page. "Wondered when you two would finally show," he remarked, calm, composed, and unruffled. "Nice-looking young lady inside causing all kinds of hell." He didn't bother looking up from his newspaper as J, K, and the worm guys went barreling past him, headed for the elevator. Those fine folks at the MIB paid him a good salary and nice benefits, but they sure as blazes didn't pay him enough to go getting all head up about nothing. Nuh-uh. Leave that to the younger man, after all. They did their jobs. He did his. He did kind of hope they had the smarts to do their jobs half as well as he did his. But he wasn't going to bet the pension fund on that. No siree. Up on the roof of MIB headquarters, Yarrow was tending to the work that Serlina had commissioned him. This section of the building doubled as a launch pad, as well as a holding area for any alien spacecraft the agency had impounded, had confiscated, or was simply keeping safe until its original owners might want to use it again. It was the intergalactic version of valet parking. There was no earthly equivalent for the technology that kept such goings-on invisible to the civilians whose office windows offered a bird's-eye view of the headquarters roof. Suffice to say, it made the hoopla surrounding the stealth bomber seem pathetic and ridiculous. There were going to be a lot of disgruntled former owners of approximately a dozen spaceships when the time to reclaim them rolled around, and it wouldn't help to tell them that this too went along with it being the intergalactic version of valet parking. When it comes to their beloved vehicles, most drivers have a limited sense of humor and find absolutely no attraction in sacrificing their property in the interest of completing the perfect metaphor. Go figure. Yara had cannibalized all of them for parts to construct the incredible ship he had put together at Serlina's behest. They were now little more than gutted hunks of interstellar junk, dismantled like so many tinker toys, their discarded portions littering the roof, transforming it into a spacecraft graveyard where the buzzards had been busy. Yara had been putting the final touches on his creation with a blowtorch. He was still cloaked, neck to feet, in that long black cape, the whole ensemble giving him the air of a blue-collar Dracula. At last, satisfied with what he had done his best, he turned off the sizzling blue-white flame and stood up. "We're ready," he announced. Contrary to appearances, he had not taken the conventional mad scientist route and gone round the twist, bonkers, crackers, insane. For want of a better term, mad. He was not talking to himself, and he was not referring to himself in the royal plural. An internal surveillance camera caught his face and the image of the finished starship, along with the shot of Laura, bound hand and foot and already stowed inside. In Zed's office, where they were overseeing the project remotely, Serlina received Yara's message on the big egg screen. Scrad/Charlie was with her, and both of the faces registered deep, sincere relief to see that, for once, she was happy. "I'm on my way," she informed Yara. Turning to her two-headed minion, she said, "My one regret is getting the light off this planet is that it saves the Earth from destruction." She handed him a shiny metal orb and added, "Proton imploder and its detonator. Powerful enough to blow up MIB headquarters once I'm gone. Use it." Before she could go, a loud ding announced the arrival of the elevator. Serlina glanced down from Zed's office to the main hall, only casually wondering who could have come calling at this late hour. Not that it would have made any difference. Anyone who took the elevator wouldn't be getting off it under his own power. Oh, he might fall out, maybe crawl out, definitely leak out, but walk out? No. Not after that special assignment she'd given the little GAT bot that she'd first taken over at the MIB headquarters. GAT, a noun derived from Gatling gun, an Earth underword slang for a pistol. GATBot, a fine example of an alien robotic technology, heavy firepower, and proof that somewhere out in the vast reaches of space there was a market for old Jimmy Gagney, George Raft / Edward G. Johnson gangster films. As if on cue, the elevator doors opened to reveal an interior that was riddled with hundreds upon hundreds of bullet holes. Bullets were still spewing loudly from the wildly spinning robot alien. Apart from the GATBot, though, the elevator was empty. Looked empty. Serlina was a seasoned warrior. She knew better than to go by appearances alone, especially when one was dealing with the men in black. "Looks like there's someone I need to eat," she remarked as she headed for the door. Someone with less martial arts training than Serlina might have asked. "Where?" but anyone with a small enough share of battle smarts generally didn't live long enough to ask anything beyond, "Did you get the number of that truck?" before he went up in a puff of ray gun-induced particles. Bottom line, never underestimate your enemy. Inside the elevator, Jay, Kay, and the worm guys had followed that excellent point of advice, which was why they weren't presently piles of bullet-ridden meat on the elevator floor. They were a cluster of bullet-free fighting men who had taken the precaution of leaping up at the first ballistic hiccup out of the gat pot and plastered themselves to the elevator ceiling. "Get to the launch pad on the roof," Kay ordered Jay, while the gat bat continued to spill out round after round beneath them. "Get light. The bracelet shows the parch point. No matter what, don't come back from me. Saving me destroys Earth." Jay opened his mouth to speak, but Kay didn't give him the chance. "I'm your superior. That's an order. Saving me destroys Earth," he told him. That was it. That was all. Jay's training was good. Too good. These were words he could never be able to argue with, or take a stand against, no matter what his feeling told him otherwise. "Okay, guys," he said to the worms. "Give me cover." With the cold steel nerve and raw guts of veteran combatants, the worm guys immediately did nothing. Okay, they shook more than a gelatin marshmallow salad in a hurricane, and clung to the ceiling like a bunch of baby baboons holding onto Mama's belly for dear life. But aside from that, nothing. "Too scared," Sleeble quavered. "Can't move." Jay gave Kay a disgusted look. Kay just shook his head. "What do they do for MIB anyway?" Jay asked. "Accountants," Kay replied. "Go." Kay thrust both legs out straight to either side, feet pressed on the elevator walls, and swung down, dangling in an upside-down split that would make stalwart man everywhere go, "Ow!" He blasted away at the little gatbot, two-handed, weapons blazing. The barrage of deadly fire drove the alien robot back, giving Jay the opening he needed if he was going to reach the light in time. Dropping to the floor of the elevator, he made a break for it, shooting as he went. He raced across the main hall of MIB headquarters to reach a second elevator, the one who would take him to the roof of the launch pad. He made it. The doors closed. No sooner was Jay safely away from Kay than he did the stomach crunch to end all stomach crunches, lifting him out of line of the Gatbot's line of fire. "Limber," Keeble the worm remarked, taking time off from being scared spitless to express genuine admiration. "Get to the sub-control panel, 7R Delta," Kay ordered. Shut down all power to MIB. They won't be able to launch." "Too scared," Sleeble repeated. "Can't." Wordlessly, Kay opened the ceiling hatch to the elevator. "Oh, that way," Keeble nodded. That way was better because it was away from the bullets, Sleeble said. No one had to tell him this would be a very good thing. "No problem," Keeble said cheerfully. He got his game face back on. "Hoa!" The worms swarmed up and out of the elevator through the ceiling hatch. It wasn't possible to tell whether they were eager to do their damnedest for good old MIB or simply eager to get the hell out of the line of fire. Kay didn't care too much. He had other worries. The little robot he had managed to drive out of the elevator was heading back, prepared to finish its interrupting job of perforating anything that moved without Serlena's say-so. Kay watched it come, made some quick, clean mental calculations, and took out a grenade. Just before the robot whirred back into the elevator, he hit the basement button and swung out of the car over the top of the Gatbot, tossing the grenade backwards over his shoulder. The elevator doors slid closed behind him. There was a pause, and then, boom. Smoke seeped out through the crack between the doors. Kay didn't stay to gloat. Gloating was for villains. He was needed elsewhere. He turned and ran. A branch of tough green neural root snaked out and clotheslined him, tendrils lashing themselves around his throat. Jerked back like a dog on a choke chain, Kay's eyes met Selena's. "Nice to see you again, Kay," she said. She was gloating. Chapter 19 and beyond. The finale will be next week. Guess you're going to have to come back then so that you can enjoy the finale of the Men in Black. Are they going to save Earth? Are they going to save everything? I don't know. I would assume so because the book is the title of them. But you never know. There could be a twist. This is the novelization after all.
This is the novelization after all. Christ almighty. Thank you, friends. Thank you for joining me again. Another week of Sunday Story Time with Romper. If you are not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Hit that bell. Turn on notifications. That way you know when new stuff is coming out, when new streams, when the scheduled streams are coming on. I mean, you know that it's every Sunday at 12, but you know. Do it. Helps me. Hit a like. That helps too. I love you guys. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful story. I only got this much left. And we got some amazing stories coming up in the future. Thank you. We'll see you next week. I guess that's a good point. Did they make a novelization of MIB2, Julie? Probably. We'll have to get that. Apparently. And then maybe we'll go back and like do Men in Black 1. You know. Like it's a prequel of some sort. All right. Later.